Anthony Castrovince. He's going to come on with us to make sense of it all. Find him on Twitter at Castrovince. He's from MajorLeagueBaseball.com or MLB.com and Major League Baseball's TV or MLB TV. And he joins us right now on the North Homestead Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram hotline. Anthony, thank you for joining us.
Hey, guys. How are you?
Doing well. You are from here, correct?
I'm from here. I live here. Look outside. Look up in the sky. We put up with a lot of BS to have a day like this, so let's live it up.
I wanted to make sure, what is the matter with the hometown team right now?
Oh, man. They're kind of, I think they're playing to their level, unfortunately. They seem to, it seems like a trend over the last season and the first half of this season where every time you start to feel a certain way about them, they do go on some kind of run or have a series. It's like, oh, okay, never mind. But, they could use one of those right now. They're definitely going through it. I think just offensively, you look at their complexion, and unfortunately, this is what they are. I think, they're average at a few spots, and that's perfectly fine, except that where they're bad, they're really bad. And right field has been a trend for a very long time now, and that's kind of reared its ugly head in a major way. And they need some offensive upgrades, and I don't know where exactly that's going to happen.
I know Tone has questions for you, but now I have to take it to a different level. So we had David Sampson on last week, and he's like, it's just, and they weren't very good at the end of last week either. So it was kind of the same stuff where it's like, what's the problem? And he had said they've played at an unsustainable level. They're coming back to the mean. You just said that. However, Stephen Vogt just a couple of days ago or 2 days ago after the game was like, hey, they haven't been themselves lately. And I'm like, well, we got outsiders who know baseball. You, David Sampson, you guys know what you're talking about here. And then I got the manager of the team going, and I'm thinking, well, is he too much in the bubble? Does he not see them for what they really are?
I don't know. I mean, that could happen, Again, I will say that they have exceeded every expectation I had for them in the last year plus. This is more what I thought they would look like last season, and we saw what happened. They were able to go the ALCS. So I don't want to be the person that shortchanges them or assumes the worst about them, and then be the grumpy sports writer in the movie when they go on to win the World Series. I don't want to be the bad guy, but I would just say that, man, I mean, you can only score so many runs with a lineup that's completely oriented around Steven Kwan and Jose Ramirez. Like, you're only going to squeeze so much out of that rag. And I think that, what you see is what you get. Now, there's some levers they can pull in their minor league system. We know that, but I just think you're seeing unfortunately, the most likely outcome of an offseason where they just didn't do enough to support this club offensively. In fact, went maybe backwards offensively, So, I don't know. I don't know how else to say it other than what you see is what you get. I wish it weren't the case. I wish there was more upside here, but I think if anything, it might be time to be aggressive with what you have in your system, because what they did in right field with that platoon, they don't want to call it that, but it was a platoon in right field, and it was really ugly. So, Nolan Jones, I think still has great power potential, but we just haven't seen it so far. So I'd be of the mind of, all right, let's see what else you got.
Anthony Castrovince with us on the hotline. So you have the numbers just like we have the numbers. They're basically bottom quarter of the league in almost every measure that matters. And that's exactly how it's looked on the field. And the really hard part about this is, Kwan is hitting. Ramirez, been incredible. So those guys have to sustain that just to keep them where they're at. That's what's hard. Now, the schedule does get easier second half of the season, at least on paper. So that's one thing. Is there any kind of, you talked about maybe infusion of some of the younger guys. They hate doing that earlier than need be, but is that going to basically be mandatory at this point?
I think so. And then, they're going to have to go out and get some help if they want to be a serious franchise, to answer that tweeter's, ringing endorsement. I think there's some truth to that. Like, they have to be serious. If you're going to compete for a World Series, and why can't they compete for a World Series? If you were 3 wins away from the World Series last year, why can't you be serious about, going for it this year? The problem is the Tigers are just playing with their hair on fire all season, and I don't see them running into that good night. So you're 9 games back at the Tigers, but you're still very much in contention in a fairly weak American League. So if you are serious, you're probably going to have to go out and get some bats, because they're just too weak in too many spots. Again, if you're league average, that's fine. You can win with that. You can play with that if you have a good pitching staff. And I do think that, yeah, I feel a lot better about the rotation than I did a couple weeks ago. I think that's trending in the right direction. The bullpen's very good. So, you have to take the pressure off those arms and get some bats. You have to find that somewhere, whether that's in your system or elsewhere. But I think you're asking too much of your system to support 3 or 4 spots in the lineup that are not just below average, but like among the worst in MLB. You can't win like that. So, go up and call up a DeLauder, call up a Kafus, sure, but you can't expect the world of those guys. You're probably gonna have to go out and get some help at the deadline.
Jose, I mean, he swings at what he likes, but I'm being told he's pressing. I swear to God, I know, Anthony. I'm being told he's pressing, and he did. He went up there he went up there in the first inning and swung at the first pitch he saw last night. So maybe he is, but he's still really incredible. Does it feel like this talent where he's that good and he's pressing and he's that good? Does it feel like it's wasted to some degree?
He's pressing his way to like a 330 average, right?
Yeah.
We should all press so well. I mean, it's hard. It's hard not to say that they haven't maximized their opportunity with a player who could, in the open market, be commanding literally, double what he makes. That was a gift from the gods, from the baseball gods, that a player that you groomed, they've had a lot of trouble on the position player side grooming impact talent. And here's a guy who comes along who is not just an impact talent, but a franchise player, a guy who's going to go down and maybe break every record in the books, maybe be a Hall of Famer with some form of C logo on his hat, on the plaque. I don't know which one, but pick one. And, you haven't done enough around him. It's a shame because, he needs more support in that lineup. He deserves more support in that lineup. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question in any other way other than true. Yes. Valid. Absolutely.
The handling of Kyle Manzardo on a day-to-day basis. Certainly he is not having a very good year. He was somebody who we thought would be able to deliver some pop and maybe emerge. He's batting just 203 and just on a day-to-day basis. We thought we'd see him more.
Yeah. I mean, they protect him against lefties, which is probably, he came out the gate looking like a guy who you should play every day and give those opportunities against lefties. And that's regressed to more what you would expect from him. I think just in terms of stylistically, what have you with the swing. But he's actually hit lefties better than you would think. It's just that I think he's struggling in the where the platoon should be stronger. But I don't know. I don't worry about Manzardo. Like, again, I don't worry about league average. I don't. For a young player, I think that you just keep giving him opportunities and roll him out there. I just think they just need support overall in the lineup to where, it doesn't have to be an impact guy. It could be a guy who just comes in and helps them from, against left-handers. I saw somebody the other day toss out Ahmed Rosario, and that kind of made me laugh and also made me think that actually makes a lot of sense. A complimentary piece like that you could fill in at multiple spots. That's probably, when I talk about the trade deadline, that's probably more likely what you're going to see than, I think maybe actually the dream scenario for this club would be if the Braves continue to fall apart and Marcell Ozuna is out there, an impact bat like that. But short of that, I think you go out and look for a complimentary piece who could just help you from the left-hand side. But yeah, Manzardo's just keep rolling him out there. He's a good hitter. He's a smart hitter. I do think with enough opportunities, he figures it out. I feel better about him than a John Kenzie Noel, who I think very clearly, was put into a difficult situation, not playing every day and really, fell out of it mentally. And at a certain point, you got to do what they did the other day and sending him down. I don't feel that way about Manzardo. So, yeah, I don't like talking about a Kyle Manzardo because he shouldn't be in the position where you need him to be 50% better than league average. That's not fair for him. That's where I'm saying, they just needed better complementary pieces offensively this season than what they went out and did. They just need to raise the floor a little bit. I think your pitching staff can kind of take it from there, but they're asking way too much of that pitching staff right now.
We played some audio earlier on the show. One of your contemporaries, Ken Rosenthal, talking about a possible work stoppage in 2026. How likely is it, do you think, right now that we could see a work stoppage?
Well, it would be after 2026 is when the next CBA is up, and there's definitely contention in the air. I just found it interesting in the last CBA, you had the players union divided amongst itself. You have the haves and have-nots. It's not unlike our country. You have the absolute elite, and they were the ones, voting in the executive board, negotiating with MLB, and then ultimately voting down the CBA. And then they take it to the rank and file, and they overwhelmingly supported the CBA. So you see a clear difference in opinion there in terms of where this should all be headed. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's ultimately going to come down to that battle within the players union, to be honest with you. The rank and file, the players who want to do better in the first 6 years of their career, maybe get to free agency earlier, or maybe just do better. Although they did quite a bit better in this last CBA, those pre-arbitration years and those arbitration years. I mean, that's really what it all comes down to is if the average player is not going to play as deep into his 30s, if that's not going to be valued in free agency, how do we do better in the first 6 years of our career? So I think raising the floor for that group at the expense of the Juan Sotos of the world, like those mega, those contracts that are incredible, but only come along for a very small percentage of players, how do you balance that? So that's what the next bargaining agreement's really going to come down to. And I can't answer that. I don't know where the players union is on that. I don't know if they know right now.
What do you think of the fact that the ratings for MLB are up? Attendance is up. Sunday Night Baseball doing gangbusters. Where does all this come from?
The main thing to me is a better product, just a crisper, better paced product. I think the pitch clock has been an absolute game changer in that regard. I know from my own existence, like I'm obviously very heavily into baseball. I worked for Major League Baseball. I cover Major League Baseball. But would I bring my kids to a weeknight game a few years ago? Absolutely not. There's no chance. If it's a 7:00 game, forget about it. We might be there for 5 innings, that's not the case now. Like now you walk into the building knowing you're probably going to walk out knowing the result. Like what a concept. In every other sport, that's taken for granted. In baseball, that was not the case. Now, between the pitch clock, and I know a lot of people don't like it, but I happen to love it. Yeah, the automatic runner for extra innings. Like you're probably going to see the outcome of the game. Cool. That's what should happen when you attend a sporting event and invest in the sporting event. So now I can take my kids to a weeknight game, no problem, especially with the 6:00 starts here locally. That's really awesome. So it starts there. And I do think they've done a better job, marketing the players, and the players have been been on board with that. The younger generation is just different. It's just, the style of the game is more flashy and just more fun. So to me, it starts there and everything just kind of flows from there. But it's great to see, and that's why we talk about these labor issues, and hopefully they get resolved without any games lost, because the game's doing very well, for all the doom and gloom about baseball some years back about the average age of the audience. I think the average age of the audience is very much in line with the rest of the sporting world. So it's been great to see.
Follow him on Twitter at Castrovince. He's on the North Homestead Chrysler Jeep Dodge Ram hotline. Anthony, thank you very much for the time. We hope to run you down again soon. It was awesome.
Absolutely, guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Anthony Castrovince. Cleveland's own Anthony Castrovince. MLB.com as well as MLB TV.